One. Welcome back, Under the Radar fans, and those of you that just watched up there our bracket rundown show. I'm Chad Sherwood, joined by a few of our panelists from the last show: John Salika, David Griggs, and Rocco Miller. We are going to be doing the rest of the bracket tonight, right, David? The rest of our season.
We are. Yeah, and it's the under the radar teams, meaning they are typically not power conferences or multi-bid leagues, and they're not in the top 25, and there's very little danger of that going on right now.
And for those of you that did just watch our prior podcast up there, this is the 1 through 47 or 1 through the end of the at-large seed list that we built during that show. And what we're going to do right in the show is we're going to fill in from 48 through 68, as well as discuss each of those 21 conferences to 22 total as we go through them. But before we even get there, we did put one under the radar team in at number 39 there, New Mexico State. I thought we oversee them. You're actually the one that I think put them in there, if I remember.
Yeah, I was the one that had actually suggested New Mexico State as far as a number 10 seed here.
And here's the WAC standings. Let's make the WAC our feature conference of the night. Not much in terms of results from the past week, actually. I don't think New Mexico State even played last week, and because we have not yet gotten into conference play.
Yeah, they played at Irvine, didn't they? UC Irvine.
I think it's up a week ago now. That's probably last Wednesday night at this point. But in terms of upcoming schedules, right to that here we've got marks on the screen, but we are getting into conference play this weekend. New Mexico State with that big rivalry rival Chicago State.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really going to get tested to kick off the WAC schedule. That's a nice, easy, comfortable way to kick off the WAC season.
Well, easy, comfortable way to kick it off, but then, David, their second game next Thursday night is maybe their toughest game of season here at Grand Canyon.
Yeah, heading to Grand Canyon, that's going to be one of the Snake Pit. Nice rivalry that they have, a budding rivalry with GCU. It's certainly a fun rivalry on Twitter anyway, but Grand Canyon, it'll be packed to the rails. It's probably one of their biggest home games of the year. They're going to be out in force for that one. So if they get past that one, I think that they can pretty much skate to first place. And if they go 18-0, 17-1, yeah, I think they'll be inside the bubble. They might be in the rankings, and the 10 line, 9 line isn't completely outrageous to think they could end up there. We've seen under the radar teams as high as that before. Oh, hell, we've seen them on the 6 line.
Well, yeah, it's been a little while now, but they did get votes in both polls, not quite near the top 25. But, John, beyond New Mexico State, Utah Valley making a little bit of noise. They've got some nice metrics, at least, in the RPI column there.
They got the nice metrics, and they'll get a decent start as far as getting both of their first 2 games at home in conference play. Bakersfield is going to be a test in that they were, I believe, the defending regular season champs from last year. But UMKC, they're down last year, but they were actually a postseason team themselves as well the previous year, but not too many guys returning from that unit.
Does Chicago State win a game at the Division I level this year?
No,
I don't think so either.
That may put them in our Centenary Award watch there. We're going to get to that. There's only a couple teams up any wins at all, of 5 or 6 without T1 wins. But, Rocco, I think the other story that kind of is surprising this conference is Seattle after an 11-6 start the season into conference play.
Yeah, Seattle. Not only do they have a great recruiting class coming in for next year, they've already started to win early. I got to see them in person when they played against Washington. That game came down to the last minute. They've got some nice pieces. They've got a Slovenian shooter that the name escapes me, but I know he's averaging in the high teens. I think that will be a really good game when they face Grand Canyon on Saturday to kick off the conference play. And also circling back to that New Mexico State Grand Canyon matchup on Thursday, we're looking at a big situation for New Mexico State because with Grand Canyon currently at 227 in the RPI, and not much of a chance to improve that, a loss for New Mexico State, unfortunately, even though it's very realistic. It's going to really hurt them big time for any at-large hopes.
Okay. What the hell happened?
We had a little
anyway.
technical difficulty there. But go ahead, David.
We always have difficulties when I'm talking. I've noticed that. I don't know why that is. Well, anyway, what I was saying was just to piggyback off of what Rocco had said, and like the losses in conference play, they're essentially bye games, which means New Mexico State not going to get a whole lot of credit for winning them outside of maybe the one game at Grand Canyon, but they're going to get dinged pretty bad for losing them. So they don't get many strikes as good as they are. You know, if they go 16-2, 15-3, they're going to really be cutting it close. But if they go 18-0, 17-1, I do think they'll be inside the bubble and probably pretty high in the rankings, and they won't need the automatic bid.
Well, good
they
news.
may not need the automatic bid, but if they fail to get the automatic bid, it will be a bad loss most likely.
Yeah, and the good news, David, is they only have to go 14-0 because they only have 7 other teams in the league.
Well, yeah, that is true. But I mean, if they were to go 17-1, that would be pretty remarkable, wouldn't you say?
Well, they do also have to beat Northern New Mexico, who they play mid-February, so that's an important game. Let's go back over to the sheet here, and I'm going to run through each of you and just give me what team you would have up next. We're not going to really debate the order of these teams here as much as just use this as the reason to go over each of these teams. But Rocco, let me start with you. Who would be your top team among all the under-the-radar schools that did not make our field here?
I'm going to go Western Kentucky because they beat Purdue and SMU, 2 teams safely in our field, although SMU now very bubblicious after the loss to Tulane, which happened after the filming. But, Western Kentucky still with the strongest resume of the remaining champions. If we did have Middle Tennessee as our champion, I'd put them there in the same spot.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an interesting pick because I kind of went back and forth with them. I do think Middle Tennessee is ultimately going to win the league. Old Dominion, don't overlook them either. Another team that's kind of quietly off to a pretty good start in Conference USA. Western Kentucky, and I realize Rick Stansbury's there, but it just seems like as someone that's followed that team for off and on for 20 years, they're going to let you down. They're going to do something that we used to call clusing, meaning they're going to lose a couple games. They just have no business losing. Yeah, I just get that feeling, but maybe they can shore that up a little bit now. And
David, I think that happens a lot in this conference just because of the amount of travel that you have to. I mean, you got this, this trip down to South Florida that Middle Tennessee's on now. You've got that crazy trip that takes you to UTSA and UTEP. And even if those teams are mediocre, it's a lot of travel and they're empty arenas. And sometimes those are harder games to get up for than the packed arenas of the national television.
You're right about that. And the UTSA UTEP trip, that is a tough trip to make because I don't think people really understand how far San Antonio is from El Paso. It's way, way out there. If you've ever been around CUSA and traveled with CUSA, not that I have, but just saying, that's a long trip.
It's about the length of Kansas and Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're gonna it's gonna be interesting. Middle Tennessee, Western Kentucky. That's actually a pretty good rivalry. Also, what do they call that? The 100 miles of hate, I believe. That's the name.
They do. I'm surprised. Yeah, and that goes back to Sun Belt days. So these two pretty decent rivalry, not super heated, but a really kind of a showcase rivalry, I guess.
Yeah, I think a little bit more on the football side. It's been pretty hotly contested in recent years, at least. But here's the upcoming schedule, Stalika, for the Conference USA. In terms of game, Middle Tennessee, who struggled at Florida International tonight, now has to go down to Florida Atlantic and then host Louisiana Tech. Western Kentucky's at Old Dominion next week.
Oh, Louisiana Tech. Losing at home to UT San Antonio, that's going to be a major black mark. And trying to rebound at a team like Middle Tennessee, that's going to be a very tall order when that comes up for them.
Yeah, Chad. And I think Western Kentucky, by this time next week, I would probably have Middle Tennessee penciled in as a favorite because I do not think they're going to survive these 2 road games coming up. Marshall's the hottest team probably in the conference. I think they've won 7 of 8, and they almost knocked off Xavier, John's boys. And that Old Dominion trip is an even more challenging matchup with their front line. So They might go 0-2 in those two games.
Yeah, Old Dominion, interesting team to keep an eye on as well. They've always struggled on the road, so that's going to be a key to Old Dominion's season here in Conference USA is how they do when they get out on the road Saturday at North Texas. I wouldn't be surprised to see ODU lose that game if they haven't figured out how to win road games finally this year.
Yeah.
David, who do we have after Western Kentucky? What conference do we go to next?
I probably have this one a little bit higher. So if there was an arbitrary decision to move them down a little bit, I have out of the Mid-American Conference, Ball State. Red hot, love how they're playing. They did stumble a little bit early in the year, but they're playing great right now, and I think that they can continue to keep it up and really put up an impressive conference record with maybe only 3 or 4 losses.
Yeah, 10-4 overall. Although, John, I really like the way this Buffalo team is playing as well, though. So I think you've got an interesting conference battle here between these two teams, don't we?
Well, Buffalo certainly seems to have the numbers in their favor, but you have to wonder about just how many signature wins they would have, even by under the radar standards that are keeping these numbers inflated. They did get a nice win in their MAC opener earlier in the week against Toledo.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. Yeah, so David, I'm glad you chose Ball State for a couple of reasons. One, they deserve to be recognized for winning 9 straight. 2, because if you look at the bottom of this league, it's a 12-team league, but the worst team is right around 500, and so there's really not going to be there's not a large range of teams like most leagues have. So I think by the end of the year, they're going to between Ball State, Buffalo, who look like the favorites right now, whoever comes out of it should be seated in that 13 area or 14, probably worst case, unless there's a major upset at the end. So I like that you chose Ball State this early because I think it's realistic they'll be in the 13 seed range when we get to the end for the MAC. And you just brought up next week's schedule. I got to do a quick announcement. I will be at the Ball State Ohio game next Tuesday. So looking forward to going to my first MAC basketball game.
Wow. But yeah, with that schedule, though, also, David, huge one Saturday with two teams just head-to-head.
Yeah, right. And that game's at Ball State. And there's a lot to be excited about at Ball State. They've really been poor in recent years. A huge turnaround job. And I know that they stumbled a little bit out of the gate, but I think they've won 7 or 8 in a row. I mean, they're just really playing well.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the only time they play this season. I do believe you play there's 2 cross-division rivals you play twice, but I don't think that's the matchup. I think that's just their only matchup for the 2 teams this year.
Yeah.
John, where would you go next, and what conference would you head to after the MAC?
I'd probably be going towards the Missouri Valley, and I would be looking at a Missouri State right now who put a nice pasting on Northern Iowa earlier tonight.
Yeah, and I'll put Missouri State in here and pull this up here. But, Rock, talk about Northern Iowa, a team that has completely imploded,
yeah,
to say the least.
Well, yeah, so I think what's happened with them is the coaches that have been game planning for them have figured out how to crack their defense. And they've struggled to score all season, but in their key wins, they were able to win some really ugly, low-scoring games. And now they're continuing not to score, and they're not getting the stops on the defensive end that they were, and they're really getting exploited. So, at this point, they're probably out of the regular season contention for
Didn't take long.
This seems to be an MO for Northern Iowa in recent years, where they do the disappearing act in January and then pull the reappearing act in late February, just prior to the Missouri Valley tournament.
Yeah, but it's just amazing that this is a team that actually was tied for number 1 in our under-the-radar top 10 list, even as of last week. And now we're just discussing them as they don't even have a shot to win their conference.
But I did not vote for them.
They did not get a single vote in our top 10s by anybody this week, by the way. We'll get to them at the end of this show, a little preview there. But David, Missouri State, starting to put things together now, 3-0 in league play.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, especially now that they're in the league play. I was a little disappointed with them really early on because I, like you, thought they were going to have a bad year or a big year, not a bad year. They kind of let us down a little bit in November, but they're really, really playing well right now. So, I mean, as good as anybody. And does this league have – because, I mean, if you look at the overall records and you look at not so much the RPIs, but the overall winning percentage in this, even once we get in the conference play, we've only got 2 teams, I think, that are below 500. If someone runs away from this conference, like 16-2, 15-3, where are they? Is it possible that it will the records will push the RPI high enough to where they'll at least be on the bubble?
One thing that's real crazy is that a team that did have a losing record going into conference play is 3-0, and that's another one of Rocco's teams, and that's Nico Medved's Drake Bulldogs.
Yeah. But that's to answer David's question, though. I agree. I think it has to be Missouri State. I think it's the only team that could do that at this point. But if Missouri State does run away with this league, 1 to 2 losses during the regular season, losing the conference tournament, I think they get a long, hard look. The problem is they didn't get that win of note, so it's just going to be a volume wins.
Well, and Chad, the Oral Roberts loss is going to be under the microscope big time. Yeah, that's super painful. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully they do it just so we can see what happens.
Yeah. The other team I just want to really quickly mention, Loyola Chicago, another team off to a bad start after picking up some notable non-conference wins, including that Florida win, losing at home to Indiana State this past week. So the second team that has imploded there. Quick look, though, at the upcoming schedule here in the MVC. They're at Northern Iowa in the bottom of the falling apart mess of a team there this weekend.
Yeah, I think you got to keep your eye on the Ramblers when we get to the end of January. They might be 1-5 or 1-6 by then, but when they get Clayton Custer back, he was the spark to that team, and he had the broken wrist. He's supposed to come back towards the end of the month. So I think going forward, they'll probably make a big push again.
Right, and they could be a dangerous team when you do get to the Arch Mass there as well.
Yeah, they can be.
Let's go. Rocco, I guess let me go back to you now, and let me get this bigger on the screen here. And who'd you have up next?
It's a tough choice, but I'm gonna go with a league that's outperformed probably any other season they've had in history that at least I can remember off the top of my head, and that's the Summit League. And
nice pick.
I'll take. I mean, you could split hairs between the 2 South Dakotas. I'll take South Dakota State.
I love the South Dakota State with Mike Baum there. He's huge win against North Dakota State the other night. Stalika, do you like South Dakota State in this league? I know you got South Dakota right there as well.
I think South Dakota is who I would have chosen for the time being, even though the Jackrabbits do have the better metrics here.
Better metrics and the real nice road win at a very tough North Dakota State team the other night there, David. Start off this play.
Yeah, I like South Dakota State. There's a couple teams I would have had ahead of them, but I mean, it's still a pretty solid pick. They're pretty tough.
Take a look at the upcoming schedule here. North Dakota State at South Dakota. South Dakota State at Omaha. And Rocco, I got to get your opinion on this one Saturday. North Dakota State, James Madison in the FCS championship game.
Yeah, it's the clash of the Titans because James Madison finally stole the crown last year from North Dakota State after all the crowns they won. Is it being played down in Texas again? Do you know?
Yes,
I believe it is. Yeah,
in Frisco.
Then I got to go North Dakota State, even though they're a dome team. I'll take them to get the cold weather victory. It's gonna be a good game.
Should be a real fun game. Definitely under the radar in terms of football. I guess there's some other football game coming up Monday night that people are excited about.
Yeah, but the 2 South Dakotas, that one's going to be fun. That was a really good semifinal game last year. It was just a great scene with the 2 rivals going at it in the conference tournament like that. So back to basketball.
All right, back to basketball, and David, who do you have up next?
This conference is atrocious, but the team at the top of it, despite not shooting themselves in the foot, shooting themselves in the head in their conference opener, I do think that it was an anomaly and that SFA will run the table from here on out and land in about this spot. I like what they've done. The close game against Missouri, they had a close game against Mississippi State, I think it was. I think that they're legitimately a good team that just had a really, really stinko night in their opener.
Well, they did lose the game, I believe. Wasn't the Southeastern Louisiana, Rocco?
Yes, Sela beat them.
A team you've been talking about all year.
Yeah, I like Sela. They had a good game plan. They caught SFA, I think, on some abbreviated travel. So they've got some built-in excuses. But the fact that they beat them by double digits, and the fact that they've hung tough with some of the large schools, and they won on the road at Kent State. Don't sleep on Sela. They've got some players. They got some shooters. Marlon Veal, I've been mentioning his name a lot. Does everything, scores, rebounds, and dishes. So I like the Lions a lot. But yeah, David, you're right. Stephen F. Austin's the class of the league. They showed it when they played SEC teams on the road. And this league isn't super atrocious as it usually is, because I still think Central Arkansas and Lamar can make a little bit of noise, but the bottom's pretty horrible.
And here's the upcoming schedule in the Southland. Should be coming up on the screen in a second now. SFA's on the road at Northwestern State this week, and then they host New Orleans, the defending league champions there, Salika.
Yeah, Lamar actually blew a chance to take a lead themselves in the Southland because they'd already lost to New Orleans. They'll probably win at McNeese State, but I doubt New Orleans is going to be able to pull off the upset at SFA next Wednesday.
I'd be shocked. But New Orleans did this last year too, and now they're doing it again.
Well, John, let me stick with you. Who would you have as your next team up here after SFA? I'm looking in the middle of the 13 line right now.
This is where I would go with one of the under-the-radar favorites in recent years, and that's going to be the Vermont Catamounts out of the America East.
Oh, not the team I thought you'd go with, but let's take a look. Let's put Vermont in there, take a look at it. I think you guys both missed it. You have all hopefully they'll come up next, but let's go America East here. Vermont should be coming up on the screen right now. 10-5, 1-0 in conference play with the win over Lowell. I believe they also picked up a win at Harvard over the week, earlier this week as well. They actually played Lowell tonight. They struggled in that game. It was close most of the way. David, I think we lost David. Rocco, if you try to get David back, but if you caught any of that game.
Yeah, and those were two gutsy wins because before the game against Harvard, they got the bad news about Anthony Lamb, the defending player of the year in the conference. He's out, I believe, 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks. So they're really trying to patch together lineups without him. So even though Lowell, obviously a bottom of the league type of team, they had won a lot of their home games this year so far against a lot of non D1 schools. But the fact that they were able to get those wins, they're going to try to just win all these games ugly till they get Lamb back. So Vermont, we're in wait and see mode. I think Albany might be the favorite until they're full strength again.
And that's why I was kind of surprised that John went with Vermont this high, because I would have dinged them a little bit because I'm worried about what's going to happen without Lamb. I mean, they still have Trey Bell-Haynes, so it's not like they have nothing left. But
but the one game I had circled though was the surprise this week, and that was Hartford going on the road to knock Albany off.
And Hartford with a win earlier over Rutgers as well. So this Hartford team might be making a little noise here. That team that we haven't discussed ever, I don't think. But here's the upcoming schedule. Vermont, tough home game with UMBC on Saturday. And then step out of conference for a road game at Dartmouth on Wednesday. So.
Yep, and Dartmouth is actually next door to Vermont, so not just the rivalry with New Hampshire that you have to pay attention to, at least from the Dartmouth standpoint.
Okay. Rocco, where would you go next after Vermont?
I'm going to go with, this is more on a prediction level, but I think this team's starting to roll, and we liked them a lot before the year started. So I'm going to go with Charleston.
Still not going where I would have gone, but okay. I do like this Charleston team. I think I agree with you. This is more on a predictive type of bet than on actually how they've performed. They've had a little bit disappointing until we've gone to Colonial play. But I'll bring up the Colonial standings here on the screen right there, as we see that they did pick up the nice home win over Towson already, and a win over Delaware as well.
Yeah, they did. And so they're off to a good start here in the league. Towson's off to a very disappointing 0-2.
Very disappointing.
but those were both on the road, so I think they can get back in it pretty quickly if they take care of home court. Northeastern, I was also surprised they were upset by Hofstra. So I think it's kind of a mess after Charleston right now.
Well, this Elon team is a team that really disappointed me in non-conference play, but I liked heading into the season after the nice 2-0 start with that win over Towson. So a team that I want to at least keep an eye on as we move forward here. Maybe they've gotten themselves straightened out moving forward. And William and Mary after a 2-0 conference start as well. I think we have David back, do we not?
David, we do.
Okay.
We're having technical difficulties. The cold, it's knocking everything down, I guess. But
there's the upcoming schedule. Charleston and Towson playing again on Sunday at Towson.
Yep. And again, it's just odd that those two would play each other this early twice. But I don't know. We've seen some odd scheduling out of this league before. But if CFC gets that one, they were awful in Alaska. But other than that, they've been about as good as I thought we expected them to be. And not only are they good, they're dangerous. They could potentially really ruin someone's day in the round of 64 if they end up getting that auto bid.
Yeah, Towson needs that one at home to make up for last week, and don't be surprised if Charleston tries to blow out Drexel in the first half on Friday so they can stay fresh for Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to jump in here and put the next team in myself here because I think you guys all kind of forgotten about Belmont here in the Ohio Valley Conference. I think that this is a team that I like their metrics better than the last couple of teams that we put in here. Probably the last 4 teams that we put in, quite honestly.
I'm a little surprised that there's another team from that vicinity that beat them twice that you don't have in ahead of them, Chad. Just wanting to point that out. But we'll go ahead and put Belmont.
That might be my next team up after that. But Belmont here's the OVC cities. Murray had surprisingly Austin P all out to 3-0 starts in league play here, David.
Yeah, Belmont, again, 2 rough losses to their rival. But outside of that, they've been really good. Close game at both. I want to say it was Washington and who was the other team? Was it Alabama? No, that was Lipscomb. Who did they almost beat and lost at the buzzer? Was it Ole Miss? Or
Providence.
Providence. Thank you. Memory's a little shot here, too much alcohol. But Murray State and Belmont, I think it's a 3-horse race. I do not expect Austin P to be up there. I know Jack State has dropped a game already, but I think that the 3 of those teams, Jack State, Belmont, and Murray State, the class of this league.
Yeah, Jacksonville State, they played a game at Tennessee State tonight. I didn't get the final score from that one, but they have an interesting game coming up at Belmont on Saturday. That might be the game of the week here, John, coming up in the OVC.
Yeah, at least as far as Belmont goes. But I certainly wouldn't be highlighting Eastern Kentucky and Moorhead anytime soon.
Murray State, Jacksonville State next Thursday also. So it's a big week coming up here for Jack State if they want to get back into things after an early season loss there. But David, let me go for our next team up after Belmont. Are you going to go with the other one?
I'm not. There's a team that I really like. Their record's a little bloated, maybe not all that impressive, but I like the Raging Cajun of Louisiana out of the Sun Belt right before Lipscomb.
Right before that mystery team that we haven't discussed yet. We don't want to spoil
that mystery team. Yeah.
Okay. But Louisiana now, especially with Arlington having been another team that is just shooting themselves in the foot or maybe even in the face. Arlington 1-2 to start conference play, and now Louisiana out to a 3-0 start and starting to clearly separate themselves from the rest of the league. I think, Rocco, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if they got 2 road wins to kick off conference. That's always a good recipe to start conference play. And then the last game and then tonight's game, they won by tonight's game they won by 33. I think it was 41-15 at halftime. So they're really clicking. And now I just want to see. I just want to see how they handle, some adversity in a tight game with this newfound confidence. They did get their big test at Clemson back before Christmas, and they got blown out of the gym. So they need to they need to show me what they got when they play, the UT Arlingtons and the Coastal Carolinas of the league. But right now they look really good.
Yeah, and David, there's the upcoming schedule in the Sun Belt. Not that certain what we're actually highlighting there. Maybe Coastal at Louisiana on Saturday.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I
Okay.
think
Maybe
so.
not.
I mean,
Okay.
I'd be
Maybe
looking
not,
at the
yeah.
Georgia schools to, possibly pile up a couple wins against the Arkansas schools here.
Yeah, Georgia Southern is a team that I don't want to forget about in this conference, at least. But
Right.
I do like Louisiana better than that. But Rocco, who'd you have up next after the Raging Cajuns?
Yeah, so it's a tough choice, but I'll go with another really hot team, East Tennessee State.
ETSU out of the SoCon. I think this was our feature conference last week, and I agree with you. I like the way that the Buccaneers are playing right now. See if we can get this SoCon standings up on the screen here. There we go. After 2-0 start, tied with Western Carolina, surprisingly 2-0, and Furman as well, who I think that is going to be their biggest battle over the course of this season.
Yeah,
No
I don't
doubt.
expect Western Kentucky or Western Carolina to be there at the end, but Furman, for real, as is East Tennessee State, as is Wofford on occasion.
Yeah, and what I will say for Western Carolina, their 2-0 record is both road wins at Citadel and at Chattanooga. So not that they've played the top, but it is 2 road wins is 2 road wins. It's
No, it's 1.5. When you win at the
Okay.
Citadel, it's 1.5.
But I think if you look at the coaching situation, it's been a revolving door at Chattanooga. It's not really surprising that they've started to fallen on hard times at recent memory.
Yeah, and Chattanooga is actually going to be hosting both East Tennessee State and Furman in the next week here. So
Ouch.
Yeah.
little tough spot there. And interesting non-conference game there next Wednesday, Harvard at Wofford as well. Occasional non-conference games thrown in here, still coming up.
And then the following day is a rematch of the conference championship from last year, and that was Greensboro and East Tennessee State.
Yep, and Greensboro's still pretty legitimate as well. I think these top 5 are looking very solid, and I can see any of them taking the conference at the end. If Samford gets fully healthy, and Mercer's is another good team. So this is going to be a fun league to follow all year. But East Tennessee State's the hottest.
Right. Well, John, I think you're up next. Where would you go?
It's interesting. I could go with who I think is going to be the best team in Northern Kentucky, or I could take the team that's probably going to have the better metrics, and that would be Lipscomb. But if I had to choose between the two right now, I'd probably say the Bison for Lipscomb.
Going with Lipscomb, another team out of the state of Tennessee. It's going to be a lot of teams from the state of Tennessee in this field. The way we're going here.
Yeah, I remember when it was a football state.
And there is a host site in Tennessee, and that's going to be Nashville.
Yeah, Lipscomb not likely to play there because they'll probably be playing against a protected seed. But David, they're really pulling away from Gulf Coast, though. Gulf Coast not looking like much of anything these days, honestly.
Well, no, yeah, and they've looked pretty good. They have 5 losses. Some of those were on the receiving end of bye games, and they also, some of them, coming without 2 of their starters. So they've looked good, whereas nobody else in the league really has. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't just win the league, but blew through it pretty much. And this is always a fun league because of the home court advantage in the conference tournament being on the line. It adds another bit of stakes to the regular season game, so to speak. But I wouldn't be at all shocked. In fact, I'm actually expecting Lipscomb to win this championship on their home court.
And look at that RPI number, though, 29. That's a big number. That's a really good RPI number, especially for getting into January here out of a league like this. I don't know that it can hold up with when they start playing all these.
I'm certain that it won't. But yeah.
But let's take a look at the upcoming schedule here as we finally get into conference play here in the ASUN. Lipscomb starting at Kennesaw at North Florida with a road trip there coming up the next week or so. But on that note, David, let me go back to you. Where do you go next?
Big West. Again, I was away for a minute. I don't think they're in yet, but I got Santa Barbara.
UC Santa
And
Barbara.
I like UC Davis as well. It was kind of a toss-up, but right now I like Santa Barbara a little bit more.
Well, what do you like about UC Davis? I mean, I know they have that big win over Washington State, but I don't know
That's
if
what I
Washington
like.
State has beaten anybody since UC Davis beat them. Have they?
Not really.
UCSB.
But I mean that is kind of what I like. But yeah.
I would note that UCSB is playing its first conference game of the season as we record this. My scoreboard shows there's 1 second left of the game, and they're up by 2 points at Cal Poly. So we may be able to get a final there in a few moments. Hopefully they can pull out that win because Cal Poly is not that good of a team.
Well, that's what I like about UC Davis. They're not running the risk of losing to Cal Poly right now.
Well, they are running the risk of losing to Cal Poly.
Davis. Okay, yeah.
No, UC Santa Barbara. UC Davis is actually up by about 13 on Irvine with about 2.5 minutes left. So,
yeah,
we might be able to find a score here in a few seconds here in UC Santa Barbara. Beyond that game tonight at Cal Poly, UCSB hosting Riverside. A little bit of news out of the Big West, actually. Riverside firing their head coach, Dennis Cutts, this past week, Rocco.
Yeah, I guess it was time to make the move. I suppose that opening win at Berkeley was not enough to save his job, as they crumbled after that game. And they got the 2 non-D1 wins, but 2-10 in the rest. And I agree with David. I think UCSB should stay the pick. That trip to Cal Poly is not fun. I think they probably take a 4-hour bus ride from Santa Barbara. So. And it's usually a pretty good crowd at Cal Poly because there's not much else going on in San Luis Obispo on a Thursday night.
Yeah, in Obispo, California.
Where'd you go next, Rocco?
Next, let's go with the Montana Grizzlies, and I'm just putting them because they are undefeated in the Big Sky. But whoever you guys want for Big Sky is okay by me.
Well, I would have been leaning towards Portland State before tonight when Portland State kind of threw up a clunker at Eastern Washington with a loss here. But let's get those standings up here. David, you were very high on this Portland State team most of the season until now. Or maybe you still are. I don't know.
I still like them, but I mean, this was a pretty – I mean, this you're kind of holding your nose after this one tonight.
Right,
yeah.
Weekend too.
Yeah, they lost.
Right, so I mean –
Sacramento State, yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, Northern Colorado's who I've liked the whole time, and I've liked Montana too. I mean, I think that Stalica was big on Portland State, but I never was.
So Stalica was all your fault, correct?
That's how I remember it, anyway.
No, Stalica would have been big on Idaho.
Yeah,
Idaho off to 1-1 start. Montana State was my preseason pick after a 3-0 start as well in Big Sky play. Here's an upcoming schedule. Portland State at Idaho coming up this weekend. And then Montana State at Portland State. So a huge week for Portland State, actually, if they can get themselves straightened out here.
Yeah, Northern Colorado is a really good home team, but you know they go on the road and they're a different team. So I'd expect Montana to be able to take them on Saturday.
Right. Well, let's John, who do you have next?
I teased him earlier, but I think this is where I would add Northern Kentucky out of the horizon.
Northern Kentucky out of the horizon.
And this feels a little bit low, but I mean, yeah. The horizon's been largely disappointing this year.
It's the worst I think it's ever been.
I think so, and I mean, the last couple of years they had Valpo that made a big difference. They were, flirting with the bubble, and I know that they ended up on the 15 line last year, but they ended up on the 15 line with the 4th place team winning the tournament. It's not normal for this to be where the 1st place team would end up.
Exactly.
For the Horizon League.
Yeah, it feels wrong, but
yeah.
The league is just not deep. I mean, there's a lot of rebuilding going on across the league. I mean, I really think it's just the Wright State, Northern Kentucky, Oakland trio, and anybody else that wins it's going to be in the play-in.
Well, if you want to talk Northern Kentucky, Oakland, Friday night, Northern Kentucky at Oakland, huge game coming up here.
Yeah.
If Oakland's going to get themselves, I mean, we thought this Oakland team would be good heading into the season. weren't healthy for a while. Then they got healthy, but they still are losing games. So they really got to get things moving here.
In the meantime, we'll also see how long Youngstown State's unbeaten mark in the horizon lasts. Maybe at home against Green Bay, but very doubtful they're winning up at Oakland next Wednesday.
Yeah, and Chad, Oakland's 6-0 at home this year. They're a much different team at home. I expect them to be able to handle NKU at home tomorrow.
Okay. One quick note here: UC Santa Barbara did hold on for 1 point lead at Cal Poly. Just want to confirm that. But David, where would you go after NKU?
We're going. Let's see, the last 15 seed. I think we're going to my alma mater, the Penn Quaker. Well, not my alma mater, but the Ivy League. This is the caliber of intelligence that's worthy of myself. The Penn Quakers.
I actually like to make that. They would have been my last 15 seed as well. We have not yet gotten to Ivy League conference play yet. Penn did lose a game against Toledo over the weekend, but still, it's not conference play. And Rocco, at least I think I've liked them best of everybody that I've seen so far, despite Princeton's win at USC.
Yeah, they've been the most consistent, so they deserve the recognition. But just based on what I saw the last 2 weeks from Princeton, I'm sold. Just because I didn't, Penn, they won some solid games and they've overperformed what their expectations were. But I still think Princeton, when you watch the two teams, is a stronger team. With they take care of the ball well, and they're really starting to click. So just going forward, I like them, and they actually, I think, open up against each other. Is that game tomorrow?
That game is tomorrow. Tomorrow night, Penn-Princeton, one of the great rivalries in all of college basketball, being played at the Pleasure.
And looking at the upcoming games, yeah. Oh, okay. They're not into it. That's because I knew that Penn and Princeton played on the bookends, but do all the travel partners / rivals do that, or is that just Penn and Princeton?
No, actually, since the Ivy League. So last year when the Ivy League put the tournament in, Penn and Princeton play both their games at the start of the season now as well, which they all will. So you'll see, for example, Dartmouth and Harvard play their first two league games against each other. Penn and Princeton, I think the same thing. They may wait like a week or two and then they may get 1 or 2 games in before that. But you'll see all the travel partners play each other early in the season.
But I think the other upset alert we have to watch for is, can Yale pull off the win at Georgia Tech?
If they were full strength, I would say yes. But this is a Yale team that may be on par with Grambling the way that they are without Mason playing, in my opinion, at least.
And Georgia Tech looked good last night.
Yeah, they did.
A whole different team.
Rocco, how about the 16 line? Who avoids the trip to Dayton?
All right. Let's. I guess we'll go with. Sorry, I had it ready. I'm gonna go with. Let's go Canisius.
Canisius. Let's go.
Really? Wow.
Atlantic, a very disappointing conference. Although I agree with you that the league is probably still strong enough to avoid a trip to Dayton. Why Canisius to win this conference over a team like Rider that won in Penn State?
I'm just throwing Canisius a bone because they're in first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll stick with Iona to win the tournament down the road. So if we want to put them in, that's fine. I think Canisius it really surprised me, and so did Quinnipiac in these first 2 games.
Now, if Canisius does go, they would be breaking a 24-year NCAA drought.
Yeah, that would be something for the Golden Griffs. But Iona, again, if they go to Dayton, they've been to Dayton before, and it was spectacular the last time they were in Dayton.
Canisius never went when what's his name was coaching there.
Not when Jim Barron was coaching. No,
they never got there. They had some good teams, but never got in.
And Chad, I remember why I'm picking Canisius now. They beat Iona and Rider, so how could I not put them in? True.
There you go. Here's the upcoming schedule there. Canisius at Quinnipiac. God, say that 10 times fast tomorrow night.
For first place.
Yeah.
But Canisius at Quinnipiac Friday night. That's probably the game of the week coming up here in the Metro Atlantic. John, who's the last team to avoid a trip to Dayton?
Avoiding Dayton, I'm probably going to go ahead and go towards the Big South and say UNC Asheville.
UNC Asheville. So surprising what team is going to Dayton, especially where they were in our preseason predictions. But let's pull up UNC Asheville here in the Big South standings. Fun league now that we get into conference play. Really tough to watch non-conference. But David, there they are at Asheville.
Yeah.
Out to a 1-1 start so far. Radford and Gardner-Webb both 2-0.
Yeah. I like this Radford team. That's actually who I had in there, but I had them in at this spot. So, again, just avoiding Dayton. I don't know, but Asheville certainly got it in them to win the league. And if this league plays out the way it normally does, we'll be 12, 13 games in the conference play, and the top 9 teams will be separated by about a game and a half.
And then there will be Longwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got nine really good teams, 9 very even teams here, and Longwood is what you have. So when you look at the upcoming schedule, Saturday, Asheville at Radford, the 2 teams we just mentioned, maybe highlight that one, but you can highlight most of these games, including Presbyterian showing a lot more life this year than they have in recent years.
Yeah, they have. Actually out to an 8-7 record overall, and for Presby, a team that, I mean, it was kind of being whispered that they might be reclassifying down. Glad they're still up and being competitive.
Well, let's take a trip to Dayton now, and let's go real quickly through these teams. And I'll throw the next one in. Team that we thought preseason could be potentially a inside the bubble type of team. At large team. Bucknell right now, we're projecting them to go to Dayton. That's how disappointing this team has been, David.
If they even get that far, I mean, they just lost at home to Boston U. I mean, we don't have the standings up on the screen, but I mean, it's just one of the bigger disappointments, not just under the radar, but all of college basketball. Just what is wrong with Bucknell?
I don't know. I still am projecting them to win the conference because I gotta believe that they're going to figure it out. But Rocco, maybe they don't. Maybe they just don't have it this year.
Yeah, I'm losing faith. But it's hard to say who's going to take them out. With the conference tournament being on home court, you know, they might not even be able to play on their home court the way that they're playing. So, but I say since Boston University won at Bucknell, you know, I'm going to have them penciled in as the Patriot champ for now. But it's clearly a toss up between probably almost every team in here. I just think, you know, I think John, you got to see Holy Cross in person. I don't think they're any kind of threat. And American looks awful as well. So I'll say any of the other 8 can win it.
Yep, and unwittingly, I had a ticket to see Colgate actually win one of 2 road games this week. They also got one against American, so they get a little bit of separation so far.
All right. Excellent. Well, let's who's up next here, Rocco?
Yeah, let's go with Texas Southern.
Texas Southern, and this may be the story of the year if it can happen. We've made a first couple steps towards the no non-conference wins and no conference losses story here for the.
That's my dream. It is my dream. It's everything. I mean, people got excited about an undefeated Patriots team a few years ago. This is even more incredible. If this happens, the SWAC game need to be breaking into whatever they're showing on CBS and cover the SWAC if this happens.
We do want to also circle Mississippi Valley, along with Coppin State, the last 2 teams left without a win against anybody so far, although you note that Alcorn State is still winless against you as well there. Upcoming schedule.
Right. And you got to figure that, a lot more centenary noteworthy stuff here than any other league, I think.
Well, Texas Southern, their game this week, they're going to be hosting Prairie View this weekend, so that may be the second best team in the conference when you look at least when you look at RPI. Actually, Prairie View has the best RPI in the conference right now, so that could be a test for the Tigers this weekend.
Yeah, I think that'll be a close game. But since Texas Southern's at home, they should be able to pull it off. And And David, I think it's going to happen. I think they can do it. I think they can run the table.
Well, John, we got the MEAC at the
yeah.
Northeast left. Who do you want to go at number 67?
I'm probably going to say Robert Morris out of the Northeast Conference would be my next choice here.
Robert
Robbie?
Morris
Whoa.
out of the Northeast Conference here, coming in, and the NEC will get their standings up here right now, hopefully. There they are. They did pick up a big overtime win in Pittsburgh tonight against St. Francis of Brooklyn. They're playing on Duquesne's court. They play a few games there every year, not on their home court. But 3-0 now in league, David, atop of Wagner.
Yeah, kind of a surprise. I mean, I liked Bobby Moore. I thought they would be in the top half of the league, but I didn't like them as much as Wagner or STFU, who I still like.
STFU 2-1, along with Wagner, Fairleigh Dickinson. SFBK 2-1 gave Bobby Moore a game, and they also beat Wagner already.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger surprises because I mean, we thought St. Francis Brooklyn was going to be awful. I think, and not only are they 2-1, they almost beat the first place team on the road. So maybe we need to watch out for them a little bit.
Yeah, the Battle of St. Francis is coming up this weekend, so a couple games to look at. And it's just fun games to watch in this conference, though. I don't know what it is.
Oh, they are.
It just any two teams in this conference play, it's almost always a good game.
Frankly, I have to applaud the conference for getting all the games in today, given the blizzard that was hitting the Northeast today.
Yeah.
I would shock teams like Fairleigh Dickinson played their games tonight, but they did. So I guess the travel was already done, and they were there.
That's impressive.
David, our last team up is going to be out of the MEAC. I'll pull the standings right up here, but who is your champion in the MEAC here, and the last team in our field?
I'm still trying very hard to believe in North Carolina A&T. Unbeaten in league play so far.
Undefeated in league play. Unfortunately, also without a win in league play. I am leaning Morgan State now that they're back healthy again. They did squeeze out a win over Maryland Eastern Shore last night to win their first league game. John, you agree with that?
I'm speechless.
You're speechless. Rocco, how about you? Here's the upcoming schedule here. A&T hosting Norfolk State, and then at Delaware State to start their MEAC play this next week here.
Yeah, A&T and Norfolk State is a intriguing one. I too, along with David, want to know if they are capable of actually competing for the league. I think Morgan State and Hampton and Norfolk's usually towards the top of they're 3-12. We'll see who rises to the top here as we start league play. It's gonna be fun. And then one other note: the 0-win team that we mentioned earlier, Coppin State. I don't know if everybody's aware, but they are coached by Juan Dixon, former MOP from Maryland, and I believe the youngest coach in the country. So we'll see how long of a rope he gets.
Well, there it is. I have put North Carolina A&T in there. That completes our field. What we'll do after the show is we'll bracket it up even. It'll be further down in the podcast. But we'll do a couple other things before we're done with it. First of all, we want to talk a little bit about the team of the people, don't we?
Oh, we always do, yes.
Huge week. Not only did they defeat Homer Simpson 99-65, they then took out the entire Dominican Republic last night, 84-60. What a win!
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy watching that game because I think it was 5 on about 1,500, just right there on the court. I'd never seen anything like that, but they won easily.
And they got a game at Point Loma. Is that near Point Break, I guess? And then they're at Dixie State. I'm not as familiar with the state of Dixie, but it's one of the states.
That's the entire South.
That's the entire South.
Yeah.
Well, the first one is actually
the entire South.
Yeah, Point Loma is actually going to be near San Diego, but Dixie State actually in the lovely metropolis of St. George, Utah.
Wrong. Dixie
Yeah.
State, the entire South, Salika. Come on. We got to
The entire
know
South.
what's going on here. Top 10 list time. How about that? January 4, 2018 top 10 list. Here we go. Number one is not Northern Iowa. The number one team, pretty obvious what we did done tonight, though, but there they are, New Mexico State. I think rising head and shoulders above everybody else at this point. Coming in at number two, despite the fact that they did not make our field, because Rocco, you went Western Kentucky. I think the rest of us all like Middle Tennessee better, but there is Middle Tennessee at number two overall in our top 10 list.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead and put them in.
Number three, we had Missouri State came on in there, another team that we discussed there as liking what they're doing out of the Missouri Valley Conference. At number four, there's that Western Kentucky team.
Good, yeah.
David, at number five, Stephen F. Austin, still getting the love here, despite the fact that they had that loss.
Yeah.
And at number six, we had Louisiana team that we discussed as well. Ball State coming in at number seven, the pick out of the Mid-American Conference. At number eight, Old Dominion. Three Conference USA teams still making our top 10, which begs the question there. Maybe is there a shot that CUSA could get two teams into the field?
I think it's possible. It's gonna like one of those three would have to sprint away from the league, though.
I just think with the travel and the road trips, they're going to stub their toe, all of them.
Yeah.
At number nine, Belmont, and coming in at number 10, rounding out our top 10 is that Vermont team. A few honorable mentions here. A few other teams receiving votes included UC Santa Barbara, Lipscomb, East Tennessee State, Charleston, and South Dakota State. I guess on that note, I'm going to pull this down here, though, and run through each of you. Any other final thoughts for the evening? John, let me start with you.
No surprise, one team that is out of the top 10, and that is going to be UT Arlington after their disastrous week at Coastal and Appalachian State.
I agree. They are pretty bad week for them and a bad week for Northern Iowa. A couple of really bad weeks. Rocco, your thoughts?
Yeah, I know I've been talking a lot about the travel in Conference USA, but it's actually a big problem across a lot of these conferences. You look at the WAC, you got trips all the way out to Chicago and back down to Arizona and into California and into New Mexico. You got the Big Sky is all over the place with the amount of buses and planes if they have the funding to do that. It just really goes to show when you really break down these matchups in the league, how much extra effort these teams have to make to try to run a table. As much as us prognosticators and prediction people want to believe they can go undefeated in their league, it really, when you break it down, it seems next to impossible.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we see here when we keep talking about these teams. Oh, well, we think this team can run the table, and then you look up the next day and they're losing games because and that's what really hurts these under the radar teams and getting these at-large bids. And I think, it'll be interesting to watch New Mexico State going forward to see if they can come close to running the table in the WAC. But David, let me let you finish things out.
I'm just glad my internet connection made it all the way through both shows.
Okay. On that note, then, on behalf of John Slico, Rocco Miller, David Griggs, again, if you didn't watch the first podcast, it's up there. If you want to see the brackets, it should be down there. And we'll talk to you again real soon.